Canal Professor Rex. Video 07. The Sad Truth. Why do some elderly people age happily and others become bitter? Part 1 opening. Have you ever stopped to observe two neighbors of the same age, perhaps both in their 70s, who have lived similar lives, and noticed that one of them radiates a kind of serene joy, while the other seems to carry the whole world on his shoulders, always ready to complain, to criticize, to remind everyone of everything that went wrong? This difference is not an accident. It's not genetic. It's not luck. And it's definitely not a question of who had an easier life. Today, in this video, I'm going to reveal the sad truth that most people have never heard, and that separates those who age with lightness, meaning, and genuine joy, from those who become increasingly bitter, resentful, and isolated as the years go by. If you are 50, 60, 70 years old or more, or if you have a loved one in that stage of life, what you are about to hear today could completely change the trajectory of the rest of your life. Stay with me, because in the next few hours we're going to talk about science, about real stories, and about practical decisions that anyone can make, starting today. I want you to think of someone you know, someone who has reached 70 and become a difficult person to be around, someone who has turned every conversation into a list of complaints, someone who has alienated their children, friends, and grandchildren, someone who seems to be at war with the present because the past wasn't what they expected. Now think of the opposite, that grandfather everyone loves to visit, that lady you meet in the park early in the morning, who smiles even before she sees you, who has stories to tell and knows how to listen, who makes you feel better just by being around her. What separates these two people? That's exactly what we're going to find out today. Part 2, the science behind emotional aging. Let's start with what science tells us, because this isn't opinion, this is fact. Harvard University conducted what is considered the largest and longest study on happiness and aging ever undertaken in human history. The Harvard study of adult development followed more than 700 men for over 80 years, from adolescence to old age, and reached a conclusion that surprised even the researchers themselves. The quality of our relationships is the greatest predictor of who ages happily and who ages bitterly. It's not wealth. It's not physical health. It's not professional status. It's relationships. Dr. Robert Waldinger, the study's director, said something that stuck in the memory of everyone who heard it: loneliness kills. It's as powerful as smoking and more dangerous than obesity. That's not a metaphor. That's medicine. But here's where things get interesting and a little disturbing, because researchers have found that people who age bitterly are not, for the most part, people who have had terrible lives. Many have had reasonably good lives. What happened was a series of unconscious choices that accumulated over the years. There's a concept that psychologists call emotional calcification. It's not an official medical term, but it describes very well what happens. Just as calcifications form in arteries and hinder blood flow, rigid emotional patterns form in the mind and hinder the flow of joy, connection, and adaptation. Think about it this way. Every human being experiences disappointments. Everyone loses loved ones. Everyone has dreams that don't come true. The difference lies in how a person processes these losses. In some people, the pain is digested, transformed, integrated into life. In others, it crystallizes, it hardens. And when old age arrives, what was a wound becomes armor, but armor that imprisons the person themselves. A 2019 study by the University of Michigan showed that people with high levels of chronic resentment have significantly greater systemic inflammation than people with similar stress levels but a greater capacity for forgiveness and acceptance. Inflammation, as you may already know, is linked to virtually all age-related diseases: heart disease, arthritis, Alzheimer's, depression. In other words, bitterness literally makes the body sick. It doesn't just hurt relationships. It doesn't just drive people away. It affects biology, the immune system, longevity. And the opposite is also true. Researchers at the University of California, San Diego, have found that people with high levels of eudaimonic well-being, which is the well-being that comes from living with purpose and genuine connection, not just superficial pleasure, have genetic profiles associated with less inflammation and greater immunity. Genuine joy, the kind that comes from within, literally changes the expression of your genes. This is what science tells us. But let's go beyond the laboratories. Let's get into real life. Part 3. The 7 Roots of Bitterness. Over years of studying the psychology of aging and listening to hundreds of stories from people over 60, I've identified 7 main root causes that fuel bitterness in old age. Pay attention, because you might recognize some of these roots in your own life or in the life of someone you love. First root: identity constructed solely around work or social role. Consider Robert's story. He spent 40 years as vice president of a large company in Chicago. Respected, powerful, always consulted. When he retired at 67, he expected to finally rest. But what happened was different. Within a few months, he began to feel that he had lost not only his job, but himself. Who was Robert without the position, without the meetings, without the weight of his decisions affecting hundreds of people? Robert began to become difficult at home. He criticized everything. He offered unsolicited advice. He felt that people no longer took him seriously. 5 years after retirement, his children hardly visited him. Not because they didn't love him, but because each visit had become exhausting. When identity is built almost exclusively around an external role, whether professional, provider, or caregiver, the person reaches old age without knowing who they are beyond that role. And this identity crisis, when unresolved, often turns into bitterness. Second root: attachment to the past and refusal to accept the present. There is a huge difference between honoring the past and being a prisoner of it. People who grow old bitter often live in a constant state of comparison. In my day, it was like this. Things worked back then. Young people today don't know what hard work is. This kind of constant comparison between an idealized past and an imperfect present is a devastating trap. Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck describes something she calls a fixed mindset. The belief that things are as they are, and that change is impossible or undesirable. People with a fixed mindset tend to see life through a filter of constant judgment, while people with a growth mindset are able to find learning and meaning even in the most difficult phases. Third root: unresolved resentments that accumulate over decades. Imagine a backpack. Every time someone disappoints you and you don't process that disappointment, you put a stone in the backpack. A child who didn't call when they should have. A friendship that betrayed your trust. A spouse who said something cruel 20 years ago. A boss who stole your credit. Individually, each stone seems small. But after 30, 40, 50 years of accumulated stones, that backpack becomes impossible to carry. Bitter people often don't realize they're carrying decades of unresolved resentments. They've become part of the fabric of their personality. I've always been like this. My family has always been like this. But no, it hasn't always been this way. It was built one brick at a time. Fourth root: progressive isolation and the loss of genuine connections. As we age, our social network naturally shrinks. Friends move away, get sick, die. Co-workers disappear with retirement. Children have their own lives. If a person doesn't make an active and continuous effort to cultivate and create new connections, isolation will silently creep in. And here's the cruel problem. Isolation fuels bitterness, and bitterness fuels isolation. It's a cycle. The more isolated a person becomes, the more distorted worldviews they develop, the more paranoia, the more judgment. And the more bitter they become, the more people avoid their company, deepening the isolation. Fifth root, the absence of purpose and contribution. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps and founded logotherapy, said something that has become etched in the history of psychology. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Human beings need more than just comfort and security to flourish. They need meaning. When a person reaches old age without a clear sense of purpose, without anything to contribute, to create, to teach, to cultivate, they often fill this void with complaints. Complaints become the language of the day, the currency of conversations, the way to feel relevant. Sixth root, the inability to adapt to inevitable losses. Aging involves losses, period. There are physical losses, mobility, energy, health. Cognitive losses, in some cases, loss of loved ones, loss of social roles. The question isn't whether these losses will happen. The question is how a person deals with them. There's a concept in positive psychology called post-traumatic growth, the human capacity not only to recover from loss and trauma, but to emerge from them with greater depth, wisdom, and compassion. Not everyone can reach that point, but science shows that it's a capacity that can be developed regardless of age. Seventh root, the constant comparison with what could have been. This is perhaps the most insidious of all. I could have been a doctor if my parents had had money. I could have married someone else if I had made different choices. I could have enjoyed life more if I hadn't worked so hard. The eternal what if, the museum of what could have been. The life that wasn't lived becomes a shadow that darkens the life that is being lived. And here lies the tragedy. The more a person focuses on what wasn't, the less they are able to see and appreciate what is. Part 4. Stories that illuminate the truth. Let me tell you about Margaret. Margaret was born in a small town in Texas, the daughter of a farmer. She grew up with little money but a lot of hard work. She married Thomas at age 22, and they had 3 children. Thomas died of a heart attack at age 58, leaving Margaret with a small farm, little savings, and 3 adult children scattered across the country. When Margaret turned 70, she had every reason to be a bitter woman. She was widowed young. She had serious financial difficulties. One of her sons distanced himself after an inheritance dispute. Her health was limited. She never left the United States, never lived the kind of life she saw in magazines. But Margaret wasn't bitter. She was one of the most sought-after people in her community. At 74, she coordinated a reading group with younger women. She cultivated a garden that she shared with her neighbors. She had developed a simple but profound philosophy. I can't change what was, but I choose what I do with what I have left. When someone asked Margaret about life's difficulties, she would say, "Every loss I've had has taught me something I couldn't have learned any other way. Thomas taught me to truly love. The fight with my son taught me to put my pride aside sooner than I should have. Poverty taught me that generosity doesn't need money." Margaret had learned, consciously or not, what researchers call cognitive reappraisal. The ability to look at the same event and find a different framing, not as a denial of reality, but as a choice about which aspects of reality deserve more attention. Now, contrast Margaret with Harold. Harold also grew up in rural Texas, the son of simple people, and had his share of hardships. But Harold reached 72 years old as an angry man, resentful of his children who didn't care enough, angry with the government, convinced that the world had conspired against his dreams. What Harold couldn't see, and this is perhaps the most tragic part, was that the children called less not because they loved him less, but because each call became a complaining session that left them emotionally exhausted. And the less they cared, the more Harold became convinced that the world was a hostile place, a perfect cycle confirming his own bitterness. Harold and Margaret, same generation, same region, comparable hardships, completely different destinies. The difference wasn't in what life had given them. It was in what each had chosen to do with what life had given them. And now comes the part that needs to be absolutely clear. These choices are rarely made all at once in one big dramatic moment. They are made every day in small moments that seem insignificant. You choose whether or not to respond to a text message from a family member. You choose whether or not to attend a community event. You choose whether to process or swallow a resentment. You choose whether to find a new purpose or wait for someone to bring it to you. It is these small, everyday choices that, over years and decades, shape the complete trajectory of how you will age. Part 5. The 8 Pillars of Happy Aging. Now I'm going to give you something concrete. Not abstract theory, not vague philosophy. 8 practical pillars that science and accumulated human wisdom have identified as the cornerstones of aging with genuine joy and dignity. First pillar, cultivate multiple identities. Don't just be a professional. Don't just be a father or grandfather. Don't just be a former athlete. Be also a learner, a curious person, a friend, a volunteer, an amateur artist, a gardener, a storyteller. The more aspects of your identity you cultivate, the greater your resilience will be when one of those aspects inevitably changes or is lost. Researchers at the University of Buffalo have found that people with higher identity complexity, that is, those who identify with multiple groups and roles, are significantly more resilient to negative life events, such as job loss, relationship breakups, and health problems. Second pillar, practice forgiveness as a discipline, not as a feeling. The biggest misconception about forgiveness is thinking it's something you feel. It's not. It's something you practice. And it's not for the benefit of the person who hurt you. It's for your own benefit. You forgive because resentment is destroying you from the inside, not the other person. Dr. Fred Luskin of Stanford University spent decades studying forgiveness and reached a striking conclusion. Learning to forgive reduces anger, depression, and stress, as well as improving cardiovascular health and the immune system. Forgiveness literally prolongs and improves life. Third pillar, maintain at least 3 high-quality relationships. Not quantity, quality. The Harvard study showed that it's not the number of friends that matters. It's the depth of the connections. 1 or 2 truly intimate friendships, where you can be vulnerable and authentic, are worth more than 50 superficial acquaintances. The practical goal is this: have at least 3 people in the world you can call at 3 in the morning if there's a crisis. People who would know something is wrong if they didn't hear from you for a week. If you don't have those people today, building those connections becomes your most important task. Fourth pillar, find or create a purpose that transcends yourself. Purpose is different from pleasure. Pleasure is what you feel when something good happens to you. Purpose is what you feel when you contribute to something beyond yourself. Research shows that people with a strong sense of purpose have less cognitive decline, sleep better, have a lower risk of Alzheimer's, and live on average 4 to 7 years longer than people without a clear purpose. The purpose doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to be saving the world. Could be teaching your grandchildren to play chess. Could be creating a community garden. It could be mentoring young people in the neighborhood. Could be writing your family's history. The size doesn't matter. What matters is that it's something that makes you get out of bed in the morning feeling like you have something to offer. Fifth pillar, develop the practice of active gratitude. Be careful here because I'm talking about something specific, not the empty gratitude people express without feeling it. I'm talking about a deliberate practice of training your attention to what is working, what is present, what is good in your life, even when many things are difficult. Berkeley neuroscientist Rick Hanson explains that the human brain has a negativity bias. It is naturally more drawn to threats, problems, and losses than to positive things. This was useful in the savannah when survival depended on noticing danger. But today, this same bias causes the mind to dwell on the negative. The practice of deliberate gratitude is literally a training to counterbalance this bias. Sixth pillar, keep your body moving. I'm not talking about marathons or gym regimes. I'm talking about regular, consistent movement that makes sense for your body and your reality. The research is unequivocal. Regular physical exercise is one of the greatest protectors of mental and cognitive health in aging. 30 minutes of walking a day, 5 days a week, produces brain benefits comparable to the best antidepressant medications available on the market. And there's more. Physical exercise isn't just good for the body. It's good for relationships. People who exercise, whether in walking groups, dance classes, swimming, or gardening, create opportunities for social connection that often develop into deep friendships. Seventh pillar, keep learning something new. The human brain has an extraordinary capacity to create new neural connections throughout life. This is what neuroscientists call neuroplasticity. But this capacity needs to be exercised. When a person stops learning new things, when they stop challenging themselves intellectually, the brain literally shrinks in some critical areas. Learning a new language, playing a musical instrument, learning to cook an unfamiliar type of cuisine, studying history, philosophy, or science, learning to paint, to program, to photograph. Anything new that requires the brain to form new connections is a direct investment in your cognitive longevity and emotional vitality. Eighth pillar, develop acceptance as an active, not passive, practice. This is the most misunderstood of the 8 pillars. Acceptance does not mean resignation. It does not mean giving up. It does not mean saying everything is okay when it is not. Acceptance means recognizing reality as it is, including the parts you cannot change, so that you can focus your energy on what is truly within your control. The ancient Stoics had a concept for this, the distinction between what depends on us and what does not depend on us. Epictetus, the slave philosopher who became one of the great sages of antiquity, said, "It is not what happens to you that determines your life, but how you respond to what happens." 2,000 years later, modern psychology confirms exactly that. Part 6, the turning point, what to do from today on. We've arrived at the part that matters most to me in this video. Because everything we've talked about so far, the science, the stories, the pillars, only has value if it translates into real action in your life. I want to propose a simple exercise to you. Grab a pen and paper now, or grab your phone to take a note. I'll wait. Done? Now write down 3 questions and answer them with brutal honesty. Not the nice-sounding answer, but the truth. First question. Is there someone in my life, a child, a sibling, an old friend, towards whom I hold a grudge that is weighing me down? If so, what could I do this week to begin resolving it? Second question. When was the last time I learned something genuinely new? Something that challenged and excited me? If it's been a long time, what could I start learning now? Third question. Is there someone in my life who, when I'm around, leaves me emotionally drained? Someone I should have an honest, loving conversation with? And is there someone I'd like to have more of, but have been neglecting? Answering these three questions honestly can give you a map of what needs attention in your life right now. Not tomorrow, not when circumstances are better. Now, I want to tell you about a fascinating study from Northwestern University. They followed people over 65 and tried to identify what the happiest people had in common. They expected to find characteristics such as exceptional health, good financial situation, and a large, close-knit family. What they found was surprising. The most consistent characteristic among the happiest elderly people wasn't any of those things. It was the willingness to remain vulnerable, the ability to still care about things, to still get excited, to still be open to new connections and experiences, even knowing that this means the possibility of being hurt. The person who ages happily is the person who didn't close their heart to protect themselves, who didn't build walls to avoid disappointment, who consciously chose to remain in the game of life with all its risks, all its uncertainties, all its unrepeatable beauty. Consider the world we live in a culture where youth is exalted and old age is often marginalized. Aging joyfully is an almost revolutionary act. It's a refusal to accept the narrative that the best part of life is already behind us. It's an affirmation that each stage of life has its own kind of richness, and that the wisdom, depth, and perspective that come with age are gifts that no young person yet possesses. Native American peoples called elders guardians of wisdom. In Asian cultures, elders are revered as the pillars of the community. In many African traditions, there is a saying, "When an elder dies, a library burns." This view that elders have something irreplaceable to offer, that it is not despite their age, but because of it, is a truth that our modern culture has forgotten, but that each of us can reclaim. And here's the beauty of it all. You can't control how many years you'll live, but you have an enormous influence on the quality of those years, on whether they'll be years of bitterness and isolation, or years of connection, purpose, and genuine joy. Part 7. Closing and call to action. Let me leave you with one last story. Helen is an 83-year-old woman who lives in Portland, Oregon. She lost her husband at age 71 after 48 years of marriage. She lost a son to cancer at age 75. She has severe arthritis that limits her mobility. She lives on a modest income in a small apartment. When someone asks Helen how she is so cheerful, she laughs with a laugh that seems to come from a source much deeper than the present situation, and says, "My dear, I have cried all I had to cry. Every tear that fell was honest. And when there were no more tears, I realized that the sun was still there. And I decided that I preferred to stay with the sun than with the absence of tears." Helen is not a mythological figure. She is a real woman with real pain and real losses. What sets her apart is not the absence of suffering. It's that she never allowed suffering to have the last word. I want you to take home a truth today. The difference between those who grow old happy and those who grow old bitter rarely has to do with what life did to you. It has to do with what you did with what life brought you. It's not about being forced and fake positive. It's not about pretending that pain doesn't exist. It's about choosing every day not to let life's obstacles accumulate until they become a wall. It's about emptying your backpack regularly through forgiveness, honest conversation, practiced gratitude, and sought connection. If you've watched this video this far, I have a belief about you. You are a person who cares about the quality of your life, who refuses to accept aging as an inevitable decline into sadness and isolation, who believes that the best years may still be ahead, not despite your age, but through it. And if you have someone in your life, a father, a mother, a grandfather, a grandmother, a dear friend, who seems to be heading towards bitterness, I ask that you share this video with that person, not as a criticism, but as a gift, as an act of love that says, I care about your happiness. I believe that change is possible, and I want your next few years to be the best and most meaningful of your entire life. Here at Top 60, we believe that life after 60 isn't the epilogue. It's a whole new chapter with its own gifts, its own depth, its own beauty. And we're here every week to remind you of that, to bring you the science, the stories, and the tools that make this phase of life as rich as you deserve. If this video touched you, tell me in the comments below, which of the roots of bitterness resonated most? Which of the pillars of happy aging do you want to start cultivating first? I read every comment, and your story matters more than you realize. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, the button is right there. And turn on notifications, because every week there's new content that can help you live better, with more health, more connection, and more joy. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring about your life and the lives of those you love. Until the next video, which will reveal another powerful secret about how people who age well spend their mornings in a completely different way from others. Spoiler, it has nothing to do with waking up early. It has to do with the first decisions you make before you even get out of bed. Take good care of yourself. And remember, the best is yet to come.